The difference between a biblical villain and you is not the kind of sin you're tempted by. It's what you do with it the 100th time it shows up. 5 lives, 5 collapses, and one pattern running underneath every single one of them. Goliath, Jezebel, Haman, Judas, and Absalom. 5 names already synonymous with trouble. And there's one more name you won't find on any villain list you've ever seen. So save your guesses, because we're getting to him before we are done. Goliath walks into the battlefield, and nobody in Israel's camp says a word. He's over 9 feet tall, armored head to foot. 40 days he stands there, mocking an entire army that just stares back, frozen. Goliath's sin isn't complicated. He trusts his size. He trusts his reputation. And when he opens his mouth, he doesn't just insult Israel's soldiers, he mocks the armies of the living God. That's the real target. Pride doesn't just make you look down on other people. It makes you forget who's actually watching. Then a boy walks onto the field carrying a sling, and in 6 seconds, the 40-day standoff is over. He refuses to fight on Goliath's terms. No armor, no sword, just a sling and 5 stones from a riverbed. And that giant, undefeated for years, falls to the smallest person in the entire camp. But pride doesn't always look like a giant on a battlefield. Sometimes it looks like a man in a palace who can't let one thing go. Now take that same pride and let it curdle into something colder, and you get Haman, second in command to the king of Persia, given the highest seat in the empire, more power than almost anyone else alive at that moment. One man refuses to bow to him, just one. Mordecai won't do it, and that single refusal consumes Haman completely. He doesn't shrug it off. He can't. Everyone else in Persia bows, and Haman still can't sleep because the one person who won't bow is the only one he can't think about. Before his plot against Mordecai's whole people even unfolds, Haman already built the gallows. He's that confident. He's already picked the wood. And you know what happens? Haman ends up hanging on the exact gallows he built for someone else. Bitterness against one person feels small while you are carrying it, but it doesn't stay small. And most of the time, the thing it's building is your own downfall. You just can't see the blueprint yet. Goliath's pride and Haman's hatred, they are loud. They're the kind of sin you can point in somebody else and feel pretty safe doing it. External, visible, easy to name. Goliath and Haman are easy to spot a mile away, which is exactly why the next 2 are the ones you should actually be worried about. They are hiding in plain sight, and nobody, not even the people who love them, saw it coming. Judas didn't walk in as a stranger. Jesus picked him, personally, same as the other 11. He carried the money box, which means the group trusted him with their finances, their resources, and the practical needs of the whole mission. 3 years on the road together, meals and miles and midnight conversations, and nobody in that group is looking at Judas wondering if he's the problem. But here's what was building underneath. Judas wanted a king, a political one, the kind who overthrows Rome and sits on an actual throne in an actual palace. And every time Jesus opened his mouth about a cross instead of a crown, something in Judas curdled a little more. He'd signed up for a revolution. He was watching a funeral. 30 pieces of silver changed hands, and nobody else in the room even noticed it happen. That's the part that should unsettle you. The turning point wasn't dramatic. No one gasped. It was a quiet transaction between a disappointed man and the people who wanted Jesus gone. And it happened in the margins while everyone else kept eating dinner. Then the betrayal itself comes wrapped in a kiss of all things. And afterwards, Judas can't live with it. So here's the principle. Disappointment with how God is actually running your story doesn't sit there quietly. If you don't bring it into the light, it curdles. And curdled disappointment has a long history of turning into betrayal. Now here's the part that might be closer to home than you are ready for. Because Absalom's story isn't about a stranger who betrayed a king. It's about a son who couldn't wait. Absalom's story starts differently, but the ending rhymes. He's David's son, good looking, loved by the people, and positioned to be next in line for the throne eventually. Eventually is the key word, because Absalom didn't want to wait. So he sits by the city gate, day after day, and one conversation at a time, he starts stealing hearts. Someone comes with a grievance for the king, and Absalom's right there, sympathetic, available, telling them David doesn't have time for people like them, but he would. That's not friendship. That's a campaign. And it builds until Absalom declares himself king in Hebron, while his own father is still alive, still breathing, still sitting on the throne that Absalom has just claimed for himself. You know how it ends? Caught by his own hair in the branches of a tree, killed against David's direct order to spare him. His own ambition kept him in a literal, physical sense, hanging there unable to move. Unchecked ambition makes you turn on the people who love you the most, the ones who would have given you the throne eventually anyway. Look at both men closely, and the common thread shows up fast. Judas and Absalom weren't outsiders, they were insiders, trusted, close, inside the circle. And it was exactly that closeness that let internal frustration become open betrayal. Judas and Absalom sinned from the inside out. What they wanted quietly curdled until it couldn't stay hidden anymore. But the next two villains, they grabbed openly. They took what wasn't theirs and called it their right. Two more villains left, and these two go straight for the heart's need to control something or gain something. Different targets, same route. Jezebel married into Israel from a foreign throne, and she brought her gods with her, packed right alongside her jewelry. She didn't ease them in quietly either. She pushed them into the culture, into the palace, into the prophet's path, until worshipping Yahweh alone started to look like the strange choice instead of the obvious one. Here's what made her dangerous though. It wasn't just the idols. It was what she did to get anything standing in her way removed. Take Naboth. Naboth's vineyard was his family's land, passed down through generations. He owns a vineyard right next to the palace, and King Ahab wants it. Jezebel doesn't sulk, she acts. She sets up false witnesses, accuses Naboth of cursing God and the king, and has him stoned to death. Also, Ahab can walk into that vineyard and call it his own. That's control, taken to its final, ugly conclusion. It's not enough to want something. Control insists on removing whatever or whoever stands between you and it. And it doesn't care what method gets used along the way. Elijah shows up after that murder and tells her flat out, dogs will eat her body in the same place Naboth died. Years pass, nothing happens right away. And maybe she figures she's gotten away with it. Then Jehu comes to take the throne, and Jezebel's own servants throw her from a window. Her body hits the ground, and dogs eat what's left, exactly the way Elijah said they would. Control feels like power while you're holding it, but it runs out eventually, leaving you with nothing, not even your own body. But the most dangerous person we're looking at today isn't a king or a queen or a governor. I'll show you who it is. But stop. Before I tell you the name, I want you to ask yourself something. Who in this room do you think is the most dangerous person to you right now? Which brings us to the name I promised you at the start. The villain who looks the most like us. He's a real prophet who genuinely hears from God, and when King Balak hires him to curse Israel, Balaam doesn't just make something up. God speaks through him, and what comes out of his mouth is blessing after blessing on the people he was paid to curse. Balak's furious. He paid for a curse and got poetry about how blessed Israel is. Balaam tells him straight, he can't say anything except what God puts in his mouth. That part of the story almost makes Balaam look like a hero. But watch what happens next, because this is where it turns. Balaam can't curse Israel directly. God won't let him. So instead, he finds another way to earn his fee. He advises Balak to send Moabite women into the camp. Israelites end up worshipping Baal at Peor, and a plague kills thousands. Balaam never lifted a sword. He never spoke a curse. He just figured out the loophole. If God won't let you destroy his people from outside, get them to destroy themselves from the inside, and let greed for a reward point you toward exactly how to do it. That's what makes Balaam more unsettling than Goliath ever was. Goliath's threat was loud and obvious, easy to see coming from across the valley. Balaam's threat wore the coat of a legitimate prophet, someone who really did hear from God, and used that access to find the one door Israel would have to open themselves. Line them up: Goliath's pride, Haman's bitterness, Judas's disappointment, Absalom's ambition, Jezebel's control, and Balaam's greed. 6 doors, 1 hinge. Each of these doors opens when you encounter a familiar sin, and instead of setting it down, you pick it back up. So here's the question worth asking yourself today, not just while you're thinking about it. Which villain am I feeding today? Not which one you used to be. Be honest about Balaam especially, because he looks the most like us. His heart was already hunting for the loophole before Balak even finished his sentence. If you can quote the verse, but part of you is already looking for the exception that lets you keep what you want, that's the warning sign. And you can still turn around from it. What would happen if someone faced every fork those villains faced and chose differently every single time? Jesus faced the same wilderness, the same throne offered without a cross, and he chose the Father's way instead, all the way to a cross he didn't deserve. Goliath trusted his strength and lost. Christ set his strength aside and won by dying. Judas sold his king for silver. Christ gave himself away for free. But here's where the whole thing breaks open. Every villain here grabbed for glory that wasn't theirs. Christ had glory that actually belonged to him, and he gave it away anyway. Tell me in the comments which one hit closest to home and what you're going to do about it this week. Subscribe, because next time we're looking at the one question that separates people who stumble from people who fall.